The stars had always been a quiet, distant place for the other species of the galaxy. For centuries, the peaceful civilizations, from the towering insectoids of Zorith Prime to the sleek, aquatic species of Ithalos, had avoided confrontation, focusing on their own growth and advancement. The idea of a death world, a planet so dangerous that life itself had to adapt in brutal ways to survive, was nothing more than a frightening myth. But the myth was about to become a reality. Far away, in the darkest corners of the galaxy, a new species was stirring. The Deathworlders. They had lived on a planet where every single creature was a threat. A world where plants could crush you in seconds, and the weather could kill entire populations in minutes. Their home was a hostile place, and only the strongest, most cunning survived. No species on their planet knew what it was like to be safe. It was a world where you either adapted or died. The Deathworlders had been watching the galaxy for a long time. For them, the peaceful civilizations of the stars were like a strange dream, a distant fantasy. They knew of the peaceful treaties, the trade agreements, and the alliances. But they also knew that peace in the galaxy was fragile. Sooner or later, someone would break it, and the galaxy would fall into chaos. That was when the Deathworlders decided to make their move. The Deathworlders had a plan. They would not come as conquerors. No, they had learned something that the other species didn't understand. The Deathworlders knew the key to survival wasn't in overpowering their enemies. It was in something deeper. It was in forming alliances with those who others saw as threats. They had learned that the greatest predators could become the most valuable allies if you knew how to tame them. So the Deathworlders made their way to the Galactic Council. It was an unprecedented move. Never before had a species from such a dangerous world approached the peaceful galactic leaders. Most assumed the Deathworlders were a myth, stories told to frighten younglings. No one believed that such a species could exist. After all, who could survive on a death world? When the Deathworlders finally arrived, they did so in silence. Their ships were sleek and strange, unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The council members watched from their grand chambers as the massive ships hovered over their peaceful planets. No weapons were drawn, no threats were made. There was only a quiet tension in the air. What were these creatures? What did they want? The Deathworlders made no immediate moves. They simply waited, observing. From their ships, they watched the galaxy's peaceful inhabitants go about their daily lives. The humans, their planet was called Earth, had arrived with one goal in mind: to make alliances. The Council would learn soon enough that the Deathworlders were not like any other species. They were unique, and perhaps even more dangerous than any predator that walked the stars. What the Galactic Council didn't realize was that the Deathworlders had already studied them. They had learned the strengths and weaknesses of the various species. They had learned how they fought, how they thought, and even how they feared. They knew that in the galaxy there were powerful predators, and they had learned how to tame them. And they knew that the time had come to show the galaxy that no one was beyond redemption. When the Deathworlders made their first move, it shocked everyone. Instead of displaying force, instead of attacking, they offered peace. They extended their hands in friendship, showing the galaxy that they were not interested in dominance. They had come to offer a partnership that was both terrifying and fascinating. The council members didn't know what to make of this offer. Was this some sort of trick? Surely these Deathworlders could not be trusted. They had come from a death world, a planet where violence and brutality were everyday occurrences. What if they were planning to take over? But there was something else. There was something about the Deathworlders' eyes, something that spoke of deep wisdom and survival, not bloodshed. It was clear that these creatures were not like the others. They didn't seek to conquer. They sought something else. And as the galaxy's leaders watched, something changed in the air. The idea of peace, something they thought impossible with a species from a death world, began to take root. The Deathworlders were here, and their arrival had shaken the foundations of the galaxy. But what was their true purpose? Why had they come to these peaceful stars? The answers would come. First, the galaxy would have to face the most important question of all. Could the apex predators of the galaxy trust the Deathworlders, or would they learn that the most dangerous species of all was the one who had learned how to tame them? The stars had always been quiet, but now they were about to become much more interesting. The Deathworlders had arrived, and their offer of peace was met with skepticism and fear. The galaxy's leaders gathered in their grand council chambers, the air thick with uncertainty. The council's members, ranging from the towering insectoids of Zoreth Prime to the sleek, telepathic elder, sat in silence, unsure of what to make of the strange visitors. No one had ever seen a species like the Deathworlders before. They had come from a planet where the environment itself could kill you in an instant. How could such a species be trusted? The Deathworlders didn't speak much during their visit, choosing instead to observe. They watched the council members with keen eyes, taking in every movement, every gesture. The galaxy was full of predators, but these beings weren't reacting as expected. Instead of being hostile or aggressive, they were patient, watching, waiting. "We have come to offer a partnership," said the leader of the Deathworlders, a towering figure with a gaze that seemed to pierce through the very soul of anyone who met it. He was known as Captain Varric, the one who led his people through countless battles, a survivor of the harshest environments imaginable. "We do not seek to rule, nor to conquer. We have seen your strength, your wisdom, your peaceful ways. But we have also seen your vulnerabilities, and we wish to help." The council was still unsure. Could they really trust these visitors? How could they be certain the Deathworlders weren't hiding some sort of ulterior motive? And yet they could not deny that the Deathworlders were different. They had nothing in common with the usual conquerors they had faced in the past. These were not invaders. These were beings who had survived a brutal world, a world where survival was not a matter of might alone, but of wisdom, adaptability, and resilience. "You speak of helping us," said Kelta, the representative of the Ithalos, an aquatic species known for their calm demeanor and sharp intelligence. "But why us? Why would you, a species from a place where death is constant, want to help peaceful civilizations like ours?" Varric's eyes glimmered with a hint of a smile. "Because we understand," he said quietly. "We understand the importance of survival and how fragile peace can be. We have no enemies because we made our greatest predators our allies. We know that only by uniting the strong can we endure what is to come." There was a murmur among the council members. The concept was new, strange. The Deathworlders had lived among the most dangerous creatures, adapted to the harshest environments, and had formed alliances with those who should have been their enemies. Could such wisdom be applied to the galaxy? Could peace truly be built through such unlikely alliances? The tension was palpable. But Varric had something else to prove. The Deathworlders had seen enough of the galaxy to know that their offer would not be easily accepted. They would need to show the galaxy the true strength of their claim. And what better way to prove their sincerity than by testing the Council's trust? "I propose a test," Varric said, his voice steady. "We will face the apex predators of this galaxy together. We will show you that even the deadliest of creatures can be allies. We will demonstrate that the Deathworlders are not simply survivors. We are partners, and together we can defeat any challenge." The room fell silent. "You want us to trust you by fighting?" asked Kelta, incredulity in his voice. The other council members exchanged uneasy glances. "What do you mean by test?" Varric's eyes shone with an almost predatory gleam. "We will choose one of the most feared creatures in the galaxy, a creature known to none other than the fiercest predators as the Red Fang. It is a creature that is said to be unstoppable, a killer who fears no one, not even the strongest of species. We will face it together. You will see that we are not afraid. You will see that even this monster can be brought to heel if we stand together." The council was stunned. To challenge such a beast, a creature that even the most dangerous species avoided, was unheard of. But Varric was resolute. He had made his point. The Deathworlders were not just powerful, they were pragmatic. They knew how to handle the impossible. They knew how to bend the very laws of nature itself to their will. For the first time, the Council saw a flicker of hope. The Deathworlders weren't offering empty promises. They were showing that their strength wasn't just in their ability to survive. It was in their ability to unite, to form partnerships that no one else had dared to imagine. They were offering the galaxy something far greater than just an alliance. They were offering a new way of thinking, a way that could change the very fabric of the galaxy. The Council hesitated. Could they accept this challenge? Could they trust the Deathworlders, who came from a world of such dangers? And yet, deep down, they knew that the galaxy was changing. The time for old ways was fading. They had a choice. They could either stand alone, or they could stand with the Deathworlders and face the unknown together. "Very well," said Kelta, breaking the silence. "We will face this test together. Let it be known that the galaxy will not be the same after this." Varric nodded, and for the first time, a true smile crossed his face. "Then we shall begin," he said. "Together, we will show the galaxy what it means to be strong." The galaxy's finest had never seen a creature like the Red Fang. Legends told of its monstrous strength, of how it could tear through the toughest defenses with ease. It was a creature born from the darkest corners of the universe, a predator so fierce that entire civilizations trembled at the thought of encountering it. The Red Fang wasn't just a predator. It was an unstoppable force of nature. The Deathworlders had been preparing for this moment for months, learning everything they could about the creature and its hunting patterns. Their scientists, military strategists, and even their survival experts had worked tirelessly to craft a plan. The galaxy's leaders had seen their determination, but they still questioned whether such a feat was possible. Could even the Deathworlders stand a chance against such an ancient and terrifying predator? The Council members arrived at the designated battleground, an isolated planet surrounded by an endless expanse of harsh, uninhabitable terrain. The planet's surface was rugged, with jagged mountains, vast deserts, and deep ravines. This was where the Red Fang had made its home, its reign of terror stretching across the planet for centuries. The creature's presence had driven entire species to extinction, and now, the galaxy's most powerful beings were about to face it. Varric stood at the front, his voice calm and resolute as he addressed the gathered leaders. "The Red Fang is unlike any creature you've faced before. It doesn't hunt for food. It hunts for the thrill of the chase, for the pleasure of the kill. It is a creature born from chaos, but we will face it together. Our strength lies in our unity." The Deathworlders' warbands were positioned along the outskirts, their weapons primed and ready. The Council members stood behind them, uncertain but eager to witness the challenge unfold. Varric's words hung heavy in the air. This was their test, their moment to prove their worth. And then the ground shook. A deep, rumbling growl echoed across the landscape, sending a chill through everyone present. The sky darkened, clouds swirling as if the very atmosphere had been tainted by the presence of the Red Fang. The creature had arrived. From the shadows of a massive canyon, it emerged. At first, it appeared to be nothing more than a silhouette, dark, hulking, and terrifying. But as it stepped into the light, the full enormity of the beast became clear. The Red Fang stood at least 3 stories tall, its thick, muscular frame covered in scales that shimmered like obsidian. Its eyes glowed a piercing red, burning with a hunger that seemed to stretch back to the dawn of time. Massive claws scraped against the earth as it walked, and its fangs, longer than any sword, gleamed in the dim light. The Council gasped in fear. This wasn't just a monster, it was a nightmare made real. Varric stepped forward, his voice steady and unwavering. "This is what we face. This is the kind of power we must learn to control." The Red Fang let out a roar that rattled the very bones of everyone standing in its path. Its teeth glinted as it opened its mouth, a sound that was both terrifying and magnificent. The creature's predatory instincts had already kicked in. It sensed its prey. And yet, there was something different in the air. Instead of the usual panic that would have set in, there was an eerie calm among the Deathworlders. They had faced monsters like this before. They had survived worse. The battle was about to begin. The Deathworlders' strategy was simple but effective. They would not try to kill the Red Fang outright. Instead, they would outmaneuver it, use their knowledge of survival to wear it down and subdue it. The galaxy's leaders could only watch in awe as the Deathworlders moved with precision, their every action calculated. They moved like a single entity, their teamwork flawless. One of the Deathworlders, a towering figure known as Krull, moved swiftly toward the Red Fang. He was armed with a specialized net, a trap designed to bind the creature long enough for the team to strike. The net was composed of high tensile fibers, strong enough to hold even the Red Fang's immense strength. But Krull wasn't foolish enough to think this would be easy. The creature would fight back. It always did. As Krull approached, the Red Fang lunged forward with incredible speed. Its claws tore through the air, aiming for his head. Krull dodged, barely evading the deadly swipe. He had underestimated the creature's speed. The Red Fang was faster than anyone had anticipated, but Krull didn't panic. He had trained for moments like this. With a quick motion, Krull hurled the net at the creature. The fibers wrapped around the Red Fang's legs, binding them in place. The creature howled in fury, thrashing against its restraints. But the Deathworlders didn't stop there. Their warbands closed in, surrounding the beast and using their advanced weapons to strike it from every angle. They weren't looking to kill. It was never about that. They were wearing the creature down, pushing it to its limits. And in the midst of the chaos, something extraordinary happened. The Red Fang, the apex predator of the galaxy, suddenly stopped. It was as if it had realized that this was no ordinary battle. The Deathworlders were not just fighting to survive. They were fighting for something greater, for the survival of all. The creature turned, its eyes locking with Varric's. The two locked gazes for a long moment. The tension was palpable, and for the first time, the Red Fang didn't seem like a monster. It seemed like a creature of nature, a force to be reckoned with. It wasn't just a predator. It was a survivor, just like the Deathworlders. And then, in a stunning turn of events, the Red Fang did something no one expected. It bowed its head. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the apex predator, the most feared creature in existence, submitted to the Deathworlders. Varric stepped forward, a deep, knowing look in his eyes. "This is how we do things," he said softly. "We don't fight to destroy. We fight to understand. And when we understand, we forge alliances." The council was silent. The Deathworlders had done the impossible. They had not only survived the Red Fang's wrath, but they had earned its respect. For the first time, the galaxy saw that the Deathworlders were not just conquerors. They were allies, partners in a new way of life. They had proved that even the fiercest of predators could become an ally, and that through unity and understanding, the galaxy's future could be changed forever. The galaxy was in a state of disbelief. For centuries, the Red Fang had been the embodiment of fear, an unstoppable force that wiped out entire species with ease. And yet, in the span of a few hours, the Deathworlders had not only survived its assault, but they had earned its respect and allegiance. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. It was a moment of reckoning, a turning point in the history of intergalactic relations. Varric stood at the forefront of the Deathworlders' ranks, his eyes reflecting the weight of the moment. Behind him, the warband members stood tall, their battle-worn faces betraying little emotion. They had done what no one had ever thought possible, but for them, it wasn't about the victory. It was about the message they had just sent to the galaxy. The Red Fang, once the galaxy's deadliest predator, now stood by their side, its massive frame looming beside the Deathworlders. It had been tamed, not through brute force, but through patience, strategy, and understanding. This was the Deathworlder way. The galaxy's leaders, still stunned by the events that had unfolded, were quick to call an emergency summit. They demanded answers. How had the Deathworlders done the impossible? How had they turned a creature so feared into an ally? But Varrock was not interested in explaining himself to those who doubted him. He had nothing to prove. The Deathworlders knew their worth. They had survived their harsh, unforgiving homeworlds, battled countless enemies, and forged their own path. The galaxy's skepticism did not concern them. Their actions spoke louder than any words. As the leaders gathered in a grand council chamber, the Red Fang loomed silently at the side of the Deathworlders. It was a symbol of their newfound strength, an apex predator who had bent the knee, not in submission, but in alliance. The message was clear. When you fight for something greater than yourself, even the fiercest of enemies can become your ally. The council members took their seats, uneasy glances exchanged among them. They had never witnessed anything like this before. The Red Fang, the legendary beast that had terrorized entire systems, was now standing alongside the Deathworlders, as though it had always been meant to be. Some of the leaders whispered among themselves, skeptical of this newfound alliance. Others were in awe, their minds racing with the possibilities that such a union could bring. Varrock, standing before them, spoke with authority, his voice cutting through the murmurs of uncertainty. The Red Fang is not just a symbol of power, it is a symbol of survival, of understanding, and it is now our ally. A ripple of disbelief ran through the room. But how? One leader, a representative from the Galactic Council, asked. His voice wavered with a mix of curiosity and fear. How can we, trust such a creature? Varrock's expression remained calm. Trust is earned, not given freely. And we have earned it, through our actions, through our survival. The Red Fang understands that. It understands that we do not fight to conquer, but to protect. We do not seek destruction, but survival. There was a long pause, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. The council members exchanged glances, each one trying to process the implications of what was happening. The galaxy's most feared predator had not been defeated, it had been won over. And now, humanity stood as the galaxy's protector, not its enemy. Varrock continued, his voice unwavering. We are not alone in this galaxy. There are forces out there, forces that we cannot yet comprehend. But we have made our stand, and we will not back down. The Deathworlders are not just survivors. We are guardians, and we will protect this galaxy from those who would seek to destroy it. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room, though some of the leaders still looked uncertain. They had witnessed the Deathworlders' strength, their resilience, but could they really trust them? Could they trust an alliance forged under such circumstances? As the council members deliberated, the Red Fang stood in the corner, silent but ever watchful. Its red eyes glowed with a quiet intensity, as if waiting for something. Varrock, noticing the creature's gaze, gave a subtle nod. The Red Fang had chosen its side, and there would be no going back. The Deathworlders' next move would be critical. They had already proven that they were capable of extraordinary things, things that defied the laws of nature. But they had also earned the respect of the galaxy's most dangerous predator. The stakes were higher than ever. The Deathworlders were no longer just a powerful force. They were now an indomitable force, a living example of the power of unity and understanding. But the road ahead would not be easy. With the galaxy's attention focused on them, new challenges were on the horizon. There would be those who sought to tear apart the fragile alliance the Deathworlders had forged. There would be those who questioned their methods, their philosophy. But Varrock and his people were prepared. They had faced the impossible before, and now they would face whatever came next with the same unwavering determination. As the meeting drew to a close, the council members stood, their faces a mixture of awe and apprehension. The future of the galaxy was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the Deathworlders had changed the game, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Varrock turned and walked out of the chamber, his warband following close behind. The Red Fang followed too, its massive form casting a shadow over the path ahead. Together, they moved forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. For the Deathworlders, the journey had only just begun. The alliance between the Deathworlders and the Red Fang was only the beginning. In the days that followed the council meeting, whispers spread across the galaxy. It was no longer just about survival. This new alliance signaled something far greater, the rise of a new power that could challenge the established order. Some saw it as a beacon of hope, others as a threat to their control. Word of the Deathworlders' victory over the Red Fang spread quickly to every corner of the galaxy, and it wasn't long before other species began to take notice. The Galaxian Coalition, the Zorvax Empire, and even the Izeth Dominion, powerful factions that had long ruled the galaxy with an iron fist, watched cautiously. Their initial skepticism was now tempered with unease. The Deathworlders had done the unthinkable. At first, some of the galaxy's leaders tried to downplay the significance of the Deathworlders' actions. They referred to them as a freak occurrence, a fluke, a dangerous mistake. But the more the Deathworlders demonstrated their strength, the more it became apparent that this wasn't a passing anomaly. The Deathworlders were here to stay, and their alliance with the Red Fang was not just a symbol of power, but a message. They had the capability to protect, defend, and, most importantly, unite the galaxy's most formidable forces. Varric and his warband continued to meet with representatives from various factions, proving that the Deathworlders were not just savage warriors. They were also diplomats. Though their methods were unconventional, they knew that the only way to ensure peace was to unite the galaxy's disparate forces. For too long, the galaxy had been fractured by petty rivalries and endless wars. It was time for a new approach, one that would bring all species together in the face of a common threat. While some factions hesitated, others saw the opportunity to join the Deathworlders. The Terran Federation, a powerful human coalition, became the first to form a true partnership with them. Their advanced technology and strong leadership combined with the Deathworlders' raw strength and survival instincts made for a formidable force. Together, they created the Galactic Defenders Initiative, an alliance of species, big and small, united under one banner. The Red Fang, once a symbol of mindless destruction, had become the ultimate protector. Its presence among the Deathworlders was a reminder of what they had accomplished and what they could continue to achieve. The apex predator, who had once hunted for sport, now stood alongside the Deathworlders as an equal, and it wasn't alone. Other once-feared predators followed suit, forging their own alliances with the Deathworlders. The galaxy was witnessing the birth of a new era, one in which strength was no longer about domination, but about collaboration. It was an alliance based not on fear, but on respect. Respect for what each species brought to the table. The Deathworlders had proven that even the most terrifying creatures could become allies when their strength was acknowledged and their values understood. However, not everyone was on board with this new vision of the galaxy. There were still factions, smaller, less powerful ones, who felt threatened by the idea of this unified front. The hierarchy that had existed for so long was now being toppled, and many of those at the top feared losing their power. In the shadows, they began to conspire, plotting ways to undermine the Deathworlders and their growing influence. Varric knew that this would be their greatest challenge yet. The Deathworlders had proven their strength through battle, but now they would need to prove their leadership. They would need to bring together species who had fought for centuries, who saw each other as nothing more than enemies. It was a delicate balance, one that could tip either way. As Varric sat with his warband, strategizing their next steps, a message arrived from the Zorvax Empire. It was an invitation to meet, a rare gesture from a species that had never been known for diplomacy. Varric couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The Zorvax had been among the most ruthless factions in the galaxy, their iron rule unchallenged for centuries. What did they want? And more importantly, what would they ask in return for their cooperation? The invitation was clear. They wanted to negotiate an alliance, but Varric knew better than to accept at face value. The Zorvacs were cunning, their motives unclear. He would need to tread carefully. If they were to join the Galactic Defenders Initiative, they would need to prove their commitment to the cause. The Deathworlders would not be manipulated or used as pawns in someone else's game. The meeting was set. The fate of the Alliance, and perhaps the future of the galaxy itself, hinged on this one conversation. Varric had faced impossible odds before, but this would be different. The Zorvacs Empire was no simple opponent. Their manipulations were legendary, and their ability to play others like chess pieces was unmatched. The Deathworlders would need to be ready for anything. They would need to show the galaxy that their strength was not just in their ability to fight, but in their ability to lead. And if the Zorvacs tried to undermine them, they would be met with the full fury of the Deathworlders, an alliance that could never be broken, a force that could never be defeated. The next chapter of the Deathworlders' journey was about to begin, and Varric knew that it would be their toughest yet. The message from the Zorvacs Empire had come just days before. An invitation, a request for peace talks. To Varric, it was more than just a diplomatic gesture. It was a carefully calculated move. The Zorvacs were not known for extending olive branches. They were known for crushing their enemies with ruthless efficiency. But the Deathworlders had become something far greater than just an enemy to be crushed. They were a force to be reckoned with, a symbol of unity and strength. Now, the Zorvacs had to decide whether they would stand with the Deathworlders or face their wrath. Varric paced restlessly in the command center of his ship, a ship that was now the flagship of the Galactic Defenders Initiative. His mind churned with thoughts. Could they trust the Zorvacs? Or was this another ploy? He had met cunning foes in the past, but none as wily and deceptive as the Zorvacs. We must remain vigilant, Varric muttered, speaking more to himself than to his warband. He had assembled his most trusted generals and allies in the meeting room, each of them waiting for his command. The atmosphere was tense, thick with uncertainty. The stakes had never been higher. The Zorvacs had been the undisputed power in the galaxy for centuries, their iron grip unchallenged by any who dared oppose them. They had crushed rebellions, extinguished uprisings, and kept their rivals in check through sheer force. But the arrival of the Deathworlders had changed everything. Varric knew that the Zorvacs saw this new alliance as both a threat and an opportunity. If they could manipulate the Deathworlders to further their own agenda, they would. But if they couldn't control them, they might very well try to destroy them. "We'll be walking into the heart of their empire," one of Varric's generals, Cora, spoke up, breaking the silence. "If the Zorvacs intend to betray us, this will be their chance." Varric nodded grimly. "We will not be caught off guard. Prepare the fleet. We go to the Zorvacs' homeworld not just as diplomats, but as the galaxy's protectors." The fleet was massive, a mix of Deathworlder warships and allies from the Galactic Defenders Initiative, all ready to fight if it came to that. Varric knew that the Zorvacs had one distinct advantage. Their homeworld was surrounded by a web of powerful defenses, more advanced than anything the Deathworlders had encountered before. Yet there was something about the Zorvacs that Varric couldn't fully trust, something in the way they held themselves, a hunger for power that never seemed to be satisfied. When the fleet arrived in orbit over the Zorvacs' homeworld, Varric's nerves were on edge. The Zorvacs' capital, a towering city of obsidian spires and gleaming metal, appeared like a fortress, a symbol of their centuries of dominance. As they made their way through the atmosphere, Varric couldn't shake the feeling that every part of the planet's surface was a trap, every shadow hiding something waiting to pounce. The Zorvacs' leader, Empress Calthira, had already arrived in the conference room when Varric and his delegation were shown in. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of ozone and old technology. Calthira sat at the head of a long, polished table, her dark, calculating eyes fixed on the Deathworlders. "Varric of the Deathworlders," she began, her voice smooth and cold, like ice scraping across metal. "It is rare to see such diverse company in my halls. What brings you here, I wonder? Varek stood tall, his hands clasped behind his back. We come with an offer, Empress, an offer of peace, unity, and a future where the galaxy no longer bleeds under the weight of endless war. Her lips curled slightly, but there was no smile in her expression. Peace, she mused. A noble concept, but one that never truly lasts, does it? You see, my people have always thrived on strength. The galaxy has been ours to command for centuries because we know what it takes to maintain order. Varek's gaze never wavered. But your order has come at the cost of countless lives. The Deathworlders have shown that power doesn't need to come from fear. It can come from cooperation, respect, and strength in numbers. There was a brief pause before Empress Kalthera leaned forward, her sharp eyes narrowing. And yet, you come to me with nothing but words. Why should I trust you, Varek? Why should I risk everything my people have built for a fantasy of cooperation? Varek's voice was calm but firm. Because if you don't, the galaxy will move forward without you. The Deathworlders have already united hundreds of species that have long been crushed under the weight of empires like yours. If you wish to remain a power in the galaxy, you will have to accept the reality of the new order. This is your last chance to join us. The Empress was silent for a long moment, her gaze never leaving Varek's face. He could see the wheels turning in her mind, weighing her options. The room was heavy with tension as everyone waited for her response. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and dangerous. You may have the strength to challenge my empire, Varek, but do not mistake my caution for weakness. If you want an alliance, you will prove it. But be warned, if you fail, I will see your species destroyed. There is no middle ground with the Zorvax. Varek took a step forward, his eyes locked on hers. We are not afraid of you, Empress Kalthera, but we will fight for the future of the galaxy, and if you stand in our way, we will fight you too. The Empress smiled darkly, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then let the galaxy decide who is truly worthy of ruling it. As Varek left the conference room, he knew the battle for the galaxy was far from over. The Zorvax Empire was a dangerous adversary, but the Deathworlders had proven they could withstand anything. Now, it was time to show the galaxy that their unity was stronger than any empire's ambition. The tension in the air was palpable. The Deathworlder fleet lingered in orbit above the Zorvax homeworld, its immense ships dwarfing the nearby stars. Varek stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as the Zorvax capital grew larger on the viewport. His mind raced with the knowledge of what was at stake. A single misstep could mean the end of everything they had fought for. The Empress had given her ultimatum, an ultimatum that Varek knew could either break the galaxy's hopes for peace or solidify them. If they failed to prove their worth to the Zorvax, there would be no negotiation, no further attempt at diplomacy. War would come, and the Deathworlders had never been more prepared for a fight. The Zorvax were waiting, their forces stationed around their capital, watching every move. Varek had no intention of waiting passively for the outcome. He had a plan. It wasn't just about showing strength. It was about proving a new way, one that would challenge the very foundations of the Zorvax Empire. Is everything ready? Varek asked, his voice steady, but carrying the weight of the galaxy's future. Cora, his second in command, looked up from her console. We're ready. The fleet is in position, and we've completed all necessary simulations for the demonstration. Varek nodded. It wasn't just about sending a message to the Zorvax. It was about showing the galaxy that the Deathworlders could unite even the most dangerous of species. It was about sending a message that the universe was no longer going to be controlled by a single empire, no matter how powerful it was. On the ground, the Zorvax had gathered in force. They weren't taking any chances. A crowd had been assembled in a massive arena-like structure, broadcasted across the planet to ensure the whole empire could witness the event. This was the moment they would choose their fate, and Varek's fleet was ready to ensure that they didn't go down without making a stand. As Varek walked to the communications room, The sound of his boots echoed in the quiet corridor. The crew on the bridge followed his every move, knowing that their leader's decisions would shape the destiny of millions. The feed from the Zorvax arena flickered to life on the large screen. Empress Calthera sat on her throne, her eyes gleaming with a sharp, calculating look. Varric could almost feel the tension in her gaze, as if she were measuring every word and movement he made.